Greetings, everyone. There's feedback. Just a few more seconds before we get started.
Recording in progress.
Greetings, everyone. I want to thank you for joining me on this webinar today, presented by the Department of Africana Studies in the School of Arts and Sciences, Newark campus of Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. My name is Hyacinth Miller, and I am an assistant teaching professor in the Departments of Africana Studies and Political Science at Rutgers-Newark. I have the pleasure and honor of being in conversation today with Ms. Sonja Leighton-Kone, who is joining us from Nairobi, Kenya, which is about 7 hours ahead of us on Eastern Standard Time. Sonja Leighton-Kone is the acting Deputy Executive Director at the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, which is headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya. Ms. Leighton-Kone has more than 30 years of experience in international development, overseeing operations in complex environments, including emerging and fragile states. As a senior member of the UNEP leadership team, she has introduced a wide range of initiatives to strengthen the organization's systems, donor partnerships, and capacity building programs. Ms. Leighton-Kone is a dual national of Jamaica and the US. She holds an MBA from Fordham's Graduate Business School and a Bachelor in Management Science from the University of West Indies, Jamaica campus. Please welcome Deputy Executive Director Leighton-Kone.
Thank you so much, Professor Miller, and good afternoon to everyone who has joined us. Thank you so much for the invitation. Shall we start?
Yes, please.
Okay. So allow me to introduce myself. I am Sonja, Sonja Leighton-Kone is a mouthful. I'm Sonja, and currently I hold 2 portfolios, which I'm going to be very excited. I'm passionate about the UN, I'm passionate about the environment, and currently I am the acting Deputy Executive Director, which means, as you can see on the screen, I represent the organization in working and discussing what are the priorities for the environment and trying to build partnerships around that. But I also have another job I love, which is called the Director of Corporate Services. And that is a job which is very much linked to my beginnings and my roots as a management scientist, in which I'm responsible for administrative and operational oversight. And by that, I mean the things that keep the house running: HR, IT, finance, supply, procurement. But I also do risk management and governance. I do strategic analysis, and the part I love the most is I do resource mobilization and partnerships. I also work with the leading global financing mechanisms for the environment. So this is a day job of mine, and this is where we start with me at a day at work. I wish, Professor Miller, if you'll allow me to introduce the guests here today to UNEP, which is the UN Environment Program. We are a leading global authority that sets the global environment agenda and ensures that we have an environmental dimension in all that the UN does. We serve as an authoritative advocate for the environment. Our mission is to provide leadership and encourage partnerships in caring for the environment by informing, enabling, and inspiring nations and peoples of the world to improve the quality of life without compromising that of the future. And how does UNEP do this in practice? There are 3 things I need you to remember. We inform, we enable, and we inspire. The informing is done by science. We're a highly data-driven organization. You can only effect change with governments, with citizens, with evidence. So we're all about the evidence, about the state and health of the planet, and we offer solutions. So we don't just raise the alarm, we provide solutions. We also have foresight. So we identify emerging environmental threats, and then we provide guidance on sound policies, because that's how you implement lasting change. We are a convening power. We empower and enable others. So we bring people together to tackle our crisis. We support environmental laws and institutions, including the US and Jamaica, where we are. And we have a role in the UN system, which I know you will know is a very, very complicated beast. And we play the role of making sure that everyone is aware of the challenges. We're also trying to inspire. There has been a period where we have been so afraid of what it means, the 3-degree warming, or what does it mean when the ozone layer is there, and what does it mean if I have to give up all my plastics? So we're trying to show that positive change is possible. We share success stories. We celebrate and award individuals. We have a very famous award called the Champions of the Earth. And we want to be the environmental conscience of the world. Finally, capacity building you have to do. So we help countries deliver on their environmental commitments, and we facilitate South-South. What does that mean? Developing to developing world, different issues, and triangular cooperation, because it's not a one-time solution. What works in the developed world may not work in the developing world, and everyone has to progress on this journey. So, as I said to you, UNEP leads on science, and I'm very, very proud of that, and it guides the world. Have you heard about the IPCC and the emissions gap, climate change, what warming is going to do? We have led the call to eliminate mercury. We have been successful in eliminating lead in petrol, and we take care of the ozone and make sure countries can have funding for that. So we're very proud of this and many other things. We do this work not only within UNEP, but in order for it to be legally binding, we support multilateral environmental agreements, which are treaties. And this is when member states sign up, and then they make commitments of what they will do. So we have commitments around hazardous chemicals and waste, what you can transport on the ocean in terms of waste and not. We have issues around biodiversity, which means forests, mangroves, etc. They're the oceans. We deal with migratory species. And as I said, because everyone speaks about it, the rehabilitation of the ozone layer. So this is what we think the world is facing now. We have a triple planetary crisis. We have a climate crisis, a nature loss crisis, and a chemical and pollution crisis. And we as an organization are trying to get everyone on board to help us to address these 3 planetary crises. This is how we see the world. We're looking for people, prosperity, and equality by 2030 by ensuring climate stability, that we learn to live in harmony with nature, and that we get pollution free, which is a tough one, but we're working on it. So this is a bit of UNEP in brief. Of course, this is what my job is about, so I have to say it. We're into results. We have to demonstrate impact. Remember that we are not a private foundation. We are running on the contributions of taxpayers and philanthropic giving and donation. We are 95% voluntary funding. And so it's really critical that we can demonstrate the impact of what we do and that we honor our commitments. We also work with partnerships. we work a lot with academia. Today I was speaking with someone from a Chinese university that is doing great things in environmental studies. We work with governments, we work with civil society, we work with indigenous people, we work with youth, you name it. Partnerships is the way to go. And finally, as I said when I started, you have to know how you spend your money. You have to be trustworthy. You have to have systems that work. So we also focus on operational efficiencies. So I think that's a little bit of UNEP in a brief. And as I am inspired by many things, you know, I've done many things in life, and now I'm on this environmental journey, and I have to give you a call on the environment. And I'm asking, you know, to think about our former, she is deceased, Nobel Peace Prize, Wangari Maathai, who is from Kenya. And just a quote of what she did, which is quite inspiring. It's the little things citizens do that will make the difference. My little thing is planting trees. So the question is, what is yours? Are you going to give up meat for a day? Are you going to put solar panels on your roof? Are you going to take a bag with you when you go to the supermarket? Are you going to refill? What will you do? Or are you going to plant trees? The point is that there are many things that we can do to contribute to this, and I would like you all to join on that journey. I think I'll pause there, Hyacinth.
Thanks so much, Sonja. That was a lot for us to process, and it was very, very informative for those who are unfamiliar with how UNEP fits within the larger UN infrastructure. I read in your bio that you have an MBA, and you indicated that you had a journey. So when I think MBA, I certainly don't think UNEP. So talk to us about how you went from Jamaica to Fordham University to Nairobi, Kenya.
Okay, that's a lovely story. And it starts in 1969. But we all need to remember ourselves as inner children. So here's a photo, courtesy of my parents, for me at 1972. So this is where my journey starts. I can't remember myself before 3. And I do want to take you on that journey because I hope that it will inspire others that lots is possible and you don't have to know everything at the start. So let me tell you a bit about Sonja and where I'm coming from. So as you mentioned in my bio, I'm a Caribbean American woman, okay? I have had the immigrant experience. I moved to America officially in 1990. I moved to Queens, Jamaica, Queens, New York. And I've had all the experiences that go along with that. I have then, so that's primarily a bit of me, because when I think, when I do problem solving, when I speak, you will hear both bits of me. I love color, I love passion, I love music, but I can also be very clinical and very executing. So it's a very interesting bit of the journey. I am a caregiver. I am a wife, I am a mother, I am a daughter, I am a niece. Unfortunately, I am no longer a granddaughter, but this is really important for us to remember because I grew up, and one of the values that we have is that you have to remember where you're coming from and take care of those around you. So this is really important because we don't leave people behind, and that's part of my upbringing. So I have to bring that with me into that workplace that I showed you every day, okay? I am a leader. Sometimes I will tell you I am a reluctant leader. You may say, oh, you don't see me a lot. I'm not a great Twitter girl. And I prefer to do things in my private time. But leadership is something that I benefited from. I had fabulous leaders, male and female, as I was growing through my journey, and it's part of my duty to do the same. So what does leadership mean? I know in the American society, you're thinking about power. I'm not thinking about leadership out of power. I'm thinking about leadership from the ability to bring change and to find solutions and clear paths for those who will come after me. So that's something we need to do. I'm constantly evolving. You've seen all these pictures. Sometimes I have glasses, sometimes I don't. My hair could be short, it could be long. I could be in a really serious suit. I could be in full African boo-boo. I am evolving through seasons. I'm still on my journey, Professor Miller, and that's very important for all of us to remember. It doesn't stop in 1 minute. I spoke earlier about the fact that I'm a management scientist. Yes, I did a BSc in accounting, okay? And then my MBA is in international finance. I thought I was going to work at JP Morgan, okay? That's where I was. I was going to give financial advice to women because at that time, we're talking in the 90s, women weren't very financially savvy, and I was doing financial planning and all of that. So that is very, very true to me. I love numbers. I love them. I can do them in my head. I can do them sideways, etc. But it's also given me critical thinking skills, which are critical in whatever path you find yourself. And I'm a global citizen, and I just wanted to say, so I'm paying tribute here to my alma maters. I'm grounded in academia. I have West Indian parents, for those who understand that. You study, and you study, and you never do anything else till you study. So that was my journey. I'm proud of it. I'm doing the same for my children. But it's a part of how I got here, Hyacinth. And it's a part of the journey and the experience of being a 19 or 20-year-old in a Caribbean university where everyone looks like you is very different from then being in a business school where there were perhaps at my time 1 or 2 people of color in the class, mostly male dominated because it was finance, but that prepared me for what lay ahead. And so these are things that I don't forget and I'm proud of. I've also been at Cambridge. That was a privilege I got to do my leadership training at Cambridge University much later in life. And so I'm always searching. I think I'm going to do a PhD, and that's why this is important for this part of the journey. And then how did I get here really? And I hope I'm not talking too fast, but I'm conscious of wanting to give you time. My journey has been a most incredible, fantastic one. And I start in 1990 when I left Jamaica, which is when I got my degree. And I moved to the US. And here I am after this. I worked at something called the General Board of Global Ministries, which is part of the United Methodist Church. And with that, I worked and they had a program and I got my MBA. And then after that, there I was off and the wonder bug hit. I became what they called a management auditor, and off I went to Bosnia and Herzegovina right after the war when they were doing the Dayton Peace Agreement. Super exciting times. I had no clue of anything related to war, to different religions, that it's fascinating how we used to do things. Just picked up myself. I had a colleague who was from Vermont who told me, Sonja, go on LLB and buy yourself a coat. Very good advice. And off I went to a war-torn country where there was no electricity and people were really managing really horrific circumstances. For me as an island girl, very happy-go-lucky, this was probably a changing point for me. I think it is. I had never been exposed to war, to crimes of rape against women, to conflict. You know, in Jamaica, we all think, you know, all of us, many one people. That was not the case. So that is a big part of my journey. And I happened to do a lot more in the former Soviet Union as part of that Bosnia experience. But then in 1999, I joined the UN. I joined the World Food Program in Afghanistan, based in Pakistan. That was in Taliban times, Osama bin Laden times. And that was super exciting, not as stressful as Bosnia, actually, but we were working on things like widows' bakeries. As you may see, Afghanistan has returned to that, unfortunately. Women are really having very, very difficult times in the Taliban interpretation of Islam. And so we had an exciting program for widows where they could run a bakery. And we did other things around that. Those were the very good years of my life. I met my husband then, and we got the bug. And then I moved to Myanmar, which maybe you know as Burma. And that was then with UNICEF, which became my love. And much of my journey is a UNICEF journey. Those were the days when Aung San Suu Kyi had won her Nobel Prize, but she was under house arrest with a military junta. They had a lot of ethnic conflicts, problems with Bangladesh. Actually, you know, it's like history is repeating itself. It's so serious. But the funny thing is, and I say this with all seriousness, my journey to Myanmar, you know, what was I, 30, 32 or so, was not made on a very serious humanitarian need. It was made on the fact that when I Googled, I saw that Jamaicans had been there in the Second World War. It was colonial. They looked Chinese, which meant I thought it would be great Chinese food, and they had rubies. And I love jewelry. So I'm just telling you that this journey was not always the way it is now, but it worked. It worked, and I learned. Important lesson that I learned in Myanmar was about cultural differences to managing negotiations and conflict. So I'm quite forthright. I'm very proud to be forthright. I consider that to be transparent. That's how I was raised. You speak the truth and you tell it. Asian culture is quite different. You are in a meeting and you think that things are going pretty well. Nobody's saying a word. So you think silence means consent. And you think it's done. And then you get out of the meeting and some brave soul comes to tell you, actually, we don't agree. I really struggled with that. That was a huge, when they talk about learning about cultures, that was huge for me because I thought that was duplicity and hypocrisy. And can you imagine me having to rewire my brain that no, this is just another way of dealing with conflicts and people. So that was a big learning. From there, I was offered, and yes, everything is very exciting at this part of life. I was given what I think is a very rare opportunity in modern life, and that is to become part of nation building. There are two new nations that we have witnessed in our lifetime. There is East Timor and there is South Sudan, okay? And I am very, very proud to be part of that South Sudan journey. So I joined when the comprehensive peace agreement was under negotiation. I led and managed the trust fund. So you want to know how the finance comes in? So I led the trust fund that managed the demilitarization of all the militias working for what was then the Sudan Peace Liberation Movement, okay? I also worked, UNICEF, which is still part of this journey, does not take sides in conflict. We work with all. We are there for children and women. So I had the privilege of doing vaccine campaigns, of going to build water wells and tanks. No, I didn't physically dig, but with my management thing, I had to go and check, did they do it? How much did it cost? Was it real? So I did a number of those programs. We had tough times. It was tough times. It was still war. And they fought high. And so I lived in a container. Do you know what a container is? It's like a bunker, but it's above ground. It's a 20 by 20. Well, first, I started in a deluxe tent. What's a deluxe tent? It has a bathroom attached to it. So this is where we started. And we really worked on getting kids back in school, which was really hard. And then I moved into the container, which was great. But I was there, and that's very important to see them become liberated and free. I was there for that. I'm part of that history, part of that story, and I know a number of the people who are in power up to this day. Now, are they doing as well as I had hoped? I really dreamt with them. I was young and idealistic. No. But nonetheless, there is a foundation there that I feel I contributed to. So then I got pregnant. And you can't do shooting and killing and running and have a baby. So I was able to go to Ethiopia with my husband, and we worked on one of the most incredible countries in Africa in relation to how they organize and manage systems. And so what did I do there? I was in charge of finance, administration, funding. So you see, there is no place where you see a program being delivered that there's not a finance or admin arm. There is no place that it can happen. In fact, we normally have to go in first to set things up so other staff can follow. So Ethiopia is quite large. It's a federal system, which means they're states, which means that we worked with states. The big issues in those days was maternal health. So it was a lot about vaccines, getting vaccines to very, very remote communities, teaching health workers how to keep vaccines at the right temperature. So we talk about, I don't know if you'll hear cold chain, those kinds of elements, but also Ethiopia was a big part of the developing world who did not want people to prescribe to them how they should be developed. They wanted to be an active part of that conversation. And so this was a very, very important lesson because you got to see national pride at work. You got to see leadership do things differently. So my journey continues. As you can see, I was hopping around every 2 years. Why is that? Because I was doing emergencies and I was doing hardship and I didn't have babies, so it was possible. So there's a second lesson there, which is that you do the jobs at the time of your life cycle when it suits you. So I did that at the beginning. But then baby number 2 came in Ethiopia, and it became clear that I needed to become more settled. And so I got what is still a privilege to then become what they call a regional chief. So this is the person who leads the others who are in country offices. And I think this is where we now start to talk about leadership, Professor Miller. So this is when it became not so much me going to count the bags or check the receipts. Do you remember? I used to check transport receipts and bills and was the money spent. So I moved from that and I moved into being a mentor and a guide for those who did that. And I could use my experience of what had worked to help to make it easier for them. And I did that job for 5 years. That was an exciting period in the Middle East. It's called the Arab Spring. I'm sure some of your students will know about it. And so although you see Jordan on this map, I was responsible for Middle East and North Africa. So Yemen, Libya, Syria, Egypt, Tunisia, all Lebanon, all of these I have walked, all of these I have supported, and I'm really happy about that. They were good years. This may not be the concept people have of the Middle East, but that's why you have to experience different things, because for my family, it was great. Then UNICEF was changing, and they thought that, you know, Sonja, we want you to contribute at a more strategic level. And this was a really difficult decision for me because I had babies. Well, they're still babies to me, but they were smaller then, okay? They were 5 and 7, and I had this thing that I had children very late in life. I didn't think I would have children, and I had them. And so they were priority number 1, as my husband will tell you. He became priority number 2. And so taking on jobs with major stress or, yes, major demands was frankly not my priority. And I kind of wanted to be out of the limelight. But as with all organizations, there are mechanisms for spotting talent, for leadership journeys. And eventually there was a fit for me, and that was in Switzerland. And then my life changed. I went from the person checking how money is spent to the person responsible for raising the money and planning for an entire organization of 12,000 with 1 billion in assets on how to make that money work, how to forecast. I had to work with FC Barcelona, with MAC, with Louis Vuitton, because this was the private sector fundraising arm. And that's very different from working with governments and member states. But it was a huge privilege because I got to speak about what the organization really did, why it mattered. We had to be really transparent, which required me to have really good financial systems. So here again, I'm telling you, it was the finance bit to ensure that we knew if you give us $1, how much of that goes to program and how much stays. And that's hugely important because distrust in multilateralism is unfortunately a part of what we live in today. It was not there when I joined in 1996, but now we have huge issues around trust. We also have a more educated global citizen who wants to understand they have choices. Why should I give you? Why shouldn't I give you? Will I get a better deal? So actually, the financial systems, that's when I felt I put my MBA to the strongest use. Because then I was doing feasibilities, I was doing predictions. I even started to go into bonds and social impact investing and meeting investors. So this is when I think my Fordham training got there. And then I decided, you know what? I love kids and I have been working, that was my calling, but my kids were becoming teenagers. And they were starting to talk about environmental issues. My son was telling me about taking containers to the restaurant so we don't do takeaway. And we don't use plastic straws. And we were going, and in Switzerland, they were already using recycled bags. And then I thought to myself, I think I have been part of a very, very, very important journey in terms of child mortality and women's health, issues of, what do we call it, female genital mutilation, child brides. This is all part of what I carry with me that I feel I contributed to changing. But there are new issues, Hyacinth. There are new compelling issues on the world. And when I think about what my legacy will be, and where will I be with my kids, and what they may ask of me, as they may ask of you and others, what did we do for this planet? Okay, for me, the answer was clear. I wanted to contribute to being part of that change and that lasting change. So I joined UNEP in 2018. It's a much smaller organization than UNICEF. And why do I say that? I told you I was dealing with billions. Now I deal with hundreds of thousands, okay? There were 12,000 staff. Now we're 1,200. But mandates, impact, ability to feel that you leave the world better are key drivers for me. And so this is why I'm here. And I've learned a lot along the way. I was not an environmentalist. I was not. I am not a tree hugger. I can barely point out the various species, and don't ask me about bats and seahorses and fishes and all of the various things. But listen, guys, you know, forest fires in Europe, forest fires in America, devastating our land, okay? You go, I'm a beach girl, you go, there is plastic everywhere. You can't even have your kids play anymore, okay? We have real issues with floods, droughts. It's getting really crazy. And so this is my chance to be part of another journey. And I'm still here 4 years later. So that is this part of it. And if you'd allow me, because I'm speaking to young professionals, and I just took you on a kind of global journey, but you know, you can't do that without knowing who you are, being centered in it, and being able to wave storms. It's not easy to jump from one country to the other. I left Jamaica in 1990. I go back to see my parents. I left New York in 1999, okay? So I am truly a global citizen. I am raising what they call third generation kids. My husband is from Ivory Coast, that's the Kone. I am Jamaican American. My children were born in New York, but have never lived there, as they remind me all the time. And so, you know, in order to navigate professional, personal, be at peace, we need to have some clarity about values. And I hope you'll allow me to share, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about them, because they're not hugely mind-blowing, but you need to have something that grounds you. So for me, number one is family, okay? I spoke to you about it before. I am where I am because of who came before me. And family for me is not just chromosomes and genetics. Family, I have also had to build in an international life and that. So I have friends who I consider family, and they are of all nations and nationalities and different religions and diversities. But you have to look beyond how people present themselves and understand what matters in hearts and how we treat ourselves. So family is very important, because at the end of the day, if you're lucky, you will retire, okay? Some of us don't even make it to retirement. But when you do, the titles and all of that won't really matter. And you'll need to be able to have a community that knows and appreciates you. So I'm saying it over and over and over again. And then for me, the second one is integrity. And I'm not talking about, you know, don't steal $1 and $5, which of course you shouldn't do, okay? But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being able to be known for who you are, for keeping your word, for meaning what you say, for being able to look yourself in the mirror, for being able to sleep at night, because you have lived and made decisions, difficult or easy, with that moral compass which is yours, which allows you to think, yes, I can live with myself. And that's really important, particularly in this era where we are so pressured to be someone else, to be somebody else. We have so much envy because we see this on TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is that we're doing, that we got to remember who we are on the inside. And that brings me to authenticity. When I joined the working world, life was very Anglo, or if you'd allow me to say it, white. It wasn't even European. I met that later. It was white American. What did that mean? When I was in Fordham, I was getting ready to buy my Ferragamo shoes, okay? I needed my briefcase. I could only wear black and navy blue, okay? Because that's what you did to conform. That's what was needed for you to be hired. I was working on not having an accent. I never wore braids. It was always in a nice little ponytail because that's what you needed to do to fit in or to attempt to fit in. I'm so happy that that part of life has gone for me and I can be who I am. Yes, I love color, so I wear color. I'm a girly girl. I do my nails. There are certain things that are a part of who I am. I bring my Caribbean experience to the workplace because I serve those who are from developing countries. I also bring the developed one because this is who I am. So authenticity is really important. And authenticity is important also because for the woman who went before me, and I'm very grateful, the expectation was that to achieve, you had to behave like a man. You had to adopt male characteristics. And sometimes, guys, as women, we're not very nice in the workplace because we think, or we thought, it's a little better now, that you had to kind of fight to get ahead. You know, female leadership is very, very different from male leadership. There is empathy in it, there is wisdom in it, and it's really very powerful. So wherever you're from and whatever your background is, keep it with you because it's part of who you are. I am a perpetual optimist. I won't say anything more about that, but I still, yes, I feel I can make a difference in the world. I feel that I'm going to leave the world better than I came into it, and I'll keep trying. Giving back is really important also. For me, giving back is really around right now. It's really around young people, okay? So I'm very happy to have had this opportunity today, but it's really about showing what's possible. For me, making policies like, you know, I've implemented certain policies. We don't have meetings after 4 o'clock because why? Caregivers have to go home. People, that was not the way it was when I was growing through the ranks, but now I'm aware of things like that. I speak to women who are really worried, oh, I'm pregnant. Does this mean I'm not a professional? No, it doesn't. So you make policies around that. So this is when I say I'm giving back. It's about using my experience, my professional knowledge, my ability to influence systems to ensure that those come behind me don't have it as hard. And I'm eternally grateful for so many, 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 many things. And no, I don't keep a gratitude journal, but I count my blessings. I say thank you. I believe, you know, I have been privileged to have those who have given to me without anything. And so that's something that I'd like to do as well. So I've been chatting a lot, Hyacinth. And so this may not be a time to go into this because I see the time is going. But if you ask me, how did I become successful as a management scientist in a UN development context? This is what I think it is about. Integrity. I laugh. I have fun. I am politically savvy. I've been able to learn different cultures and way it is. I believe you have to maintain respect and dignity. You have to be strategic. You know, people We are working with people to make change, and they need to be respected wherever they are. And, then you can have conversations. So this is a lot of what I'm about. You see my numbers. I'm a straight talker, but these are the things that are in my toolkit. My toolkit changes as I have developed along the way, because I've had to learn new things, and sometimes I've had to shift some other things, but this is basically where I think I am. And I think I'll stop here because I need to take a drink. And I've been talking a lot, but perhaps people will want to ask questions around this area. But before I hand over, I wanted to share with you this, and I hope you felt that as I'm talking. I want to leave the world a better place. I still need to know that what I do makes a difference. So goals and results are important. At this part of my life, mentorship and enabling others to thrive is really important. And as I said, here are the Kones. The family is really important. So back to you.
Wow, what a journey. That was really inspirational. And I appreciate the transparency, especially as it relates to you going to Myanmar. I think students need to see a lot of that, because oftentimes we look at professionals who are doing things that we want to do, and it's like, wow, how did you get there? And sometimes you get there just because. So that's in essence what you've described. So I am going to open it up to questions from the students. You've been everywhere. So Rutgers-Newark is the most diverse campus in the country. So we have people from everywhere, particularly the states that you mentioned. So if there are any students that have any questions, feel free to post something in the Q&A. And I neglected to mention earlier that this webinar is going to be recorded, and it will be transcribed. And at some point within the next couple of weeks, it will be posted on the Department of Africana Studies website in case you want to go back over these words of wisdom that were shared by Sonja. So hang on for a minute. I will go to the Q&A. Okay, so from Sally Shobat, I didn't know if she wanted me to mention her name, but what path or program would you recommend for dual citizen Americans to enter the workforce of the UN? And secondly, do you recommend applying as an American or using other nationality when applying for positions at the UN?
Fabulous question. This is somebody who is already doing some research. And the answer is, it depends. Okay. When I joined the UN, I was Jamaican. And then when I came to UNICEF, by then I had become naturalized. And at the time, it was kind of an insistence that I became American. And I was told, so I'm being very transparent, that it's great to be American because they're the largest donor. And as you grow through the journey, it may help, okay? But as you heard from my journey, I have not lived in the States since 2000. I don't know my congressman and my state and what have you. So whether or not that has really helped me is Right now, the UN is about reflecting who they serve. So right now, diversity is very, very important. So whereas I won't tell you what you should do, I can tell you that both work. The US continues to be extremely influential and will be for many years to come. But there is also the fact that as we have become more aware in the UN, and I'll speak to that a little bit later when we talk about careers, about the fact that we need to represent everyone. There is major drives, and you will see it in some of the advertisements for countries for developing countries. So I give you both options. They have pros and cons. In the short term, definitely developing is right now highly attractive. In the future, in the long term, I don't know. Okay.
Thank you for that, Sonja. I will go to question number 2, and I won't say the names because I wasn't given permission. So this person asks, what has been some of the most difficult parts of the jobs you've had, and how did you navigate them?
Holding people, being responsible for people's lives. So I told you about the early part of my career in Afghanistan, Myanmar, South Sudan. One of the parts I didn't tell you about was my security brief, my human resource brief. I've done a lot of medical evacuations out of wars. A lot of people who have maybe not made it, making kind of life or death decisions, sometimes frequently in the night, about whether you can send a plane in to evacuate somebody or not, and how you're going to manage telling their family members when, when we all join, including me, we join with this idealistic passion, but at the end of the day, things can happen, and you may feel that the UN is going to be able to come in like the cavalry and save you, and it can't. So that, for me, remains one of my most difficult things, because like when you study psychology or psychiatry, you're supposed to be able to disconnect and separate, but actually, it's not really that easy to do when you're managing and you know people, and in emergencies, you get really tight and you really know about people. So that's one. The second one is confronting fraud, confronting dishonesty in dealing with maybe your colleagues or the partners that you work with. We do get death threats. You do have to make some tough calls related to, can you speak truth to power? Do you want to challenge the status quo, or do you want to let it lie? These are judgments that, you walk as you develop and through life, but these are some of them. I don't know if you were thinking of other kinds of things. Nowadays, my difficult moments come in negotiating between member states. We are in a huge, if you take the Ukraine war, if you take floods in Pakistan, if you take the continent of Africa, there are huge debates currently about loss and damage. I don't know if you've heard these terms, but it's about what do the developing countries deserve from the developed countries, because the notion is that the developed countries benefited for many, many years from exploiting our planet, okay? And now when Africa and Latin America is getting ready to discover oil or mines and drill, they're being told, no, you can't do it because it's not good for the planet. And they're saying, hang on a minute, but you were doing this all this time and now you're telling me not to do it? So negotiating among member states, being even, finding ways, as I told you, we convene, bringing people together, that's not pretty easy. That's not easy. Thank you.
I can certainly appreciate that. The questions are coming in, so I won't have time for follow-up right now, but I do have a few questions to ask afterward. The next question is, I am interested in entering the UN workforce. What challenges have you faced through your journey in these different countries as a foreigner?
What challenges haven't I faced? When I went to Bosnia, I was the only Black person they had ever seen. And I was a hot Black Jamaican chick with long braids, loud as ever, going into this place where they didn't even know where Jamaica was and having to navigate, and being pointed at and being stared at. And I'm talking honestly, you have to have self-confidence when you do this job. Huh? You walk in the streets and the whole village stops to look at you. And then they want to touch you and what have you. Yes, it was some time ago, but that was a part of it. I've spoken to you about cultural differences, which are really important when you start to do multilateralism, which is what you're interested in. So that notion of being respectful, that understanding that different people may perceive you, we all have unconscious bias. So people may perceive you differently just by how you present. And then getting space in the room to communicate is something, to be honest, which I think at 53, I'm still living today. It's just part of what it is. There is that. But if I can give you a funny story, which is not really funny, but it is funny. When I went to Pakistan, that is a devout Muslim country. I had been given all these rules about how to dress conservatively, what to wear, how to go, etc. It's a culture wherein there are a lot of rules about how women can present, what roles they can have, etc. And I led a 90% male team, okay? 90%. And most of them were older than me too. So getting to be accepted meant a whole lot of investment of my time in showing that I understood the tools of my trade and I knew my craft, okay? It also meant that I had to be open to going to weddings, to understanding religious ceremonies, so that I could also show appreciation. So my thing is to you, is that you are going to meet unpredictable challenges, but they can be navigated with an open mind, an open spirit. And in general, there are other people there who will support you and kind of tell you how to navigate.
Thank you for that. The next question is, has there been anyone you helped through programs you were a part of that reached out to thank you?
I'm not supposed to say that. We are very, what would you say? I am satisfied, let me put it, with what I have done and what I have contributed. And yes, I have received feedback, etc. It is one of the things that I regret was that my professional journey didn't start in this social media life of now, okay? And so I find that in my earlier years, particularly, I talk about Bosnia and South Sudan and stuff, I didn't maintain those contacts. Letters didn't seem to work, and we didn't have WhatsApp and email. So I have regrets around not maintaining some of those very earlier parts of my journey. But I learned from that, and I am proud that I have connections throughout. Yeah, but I also keep in touch with my colleagues who I've mentored, and some of them are really flying. And so that, I think, right now is what gives me even greater reward, to see them doing well.
Thank you. And another question, they are coming in, Sonja. Do you work with corporations? And if you do you find it hard to find a balance between addressing climate change and the corporations looking to make a profit?
Yes, yes. I do work with corporations. We are out to change the world, which means we work with all stakeholders. You know that some corporations have more money than countries, yeah? You can't avoid them in this thing. And I didn't speak to you about a concept called circularity, but this whole industrial change from raw material to the goods or the dresses or whatever you have, to how we dispose of it, you can't do that without corporations. So yes, that is part of the journey. We are very, very careful, and perhaps our risk appetite is very low right now. I'm going to be honest. We debate it around engaging with corporations because, you know, there are all kinds of scandals. Do they employ well? What are they doing in the communities in which they work? Are they using the UN logo to bring you and I on their journey to buy from them, but they are really not actually walking the talk? So this is a very important area, and there are two ways that we navigate it. There is a system called the UN Global Compact, which has agreed on global standards that all UN agencies need. It has established some exclusionary criteria, one of which is armaments. You can't be active in arms trade, or you can't be in tobacco. I'm just naming two of them. So we have that process. In UNICEF and in UNEP, we have our own screening processes for due diligence, which is a process whereas we looked at financial viability, we look at corporate standards, we do scanning of news to see what scandals could have been in, we look at board of directors, we look to say that they haven't been putting money in Cayman. We do all of that stuff so we know where the money is from. And what we've decided right now is we work with corporations as coalitions. We do not accept funding, actually, as UNEP, from corporations right now bilaterally, but we will work with them as platforms. So a very famous platform we have is called the UNEP Finance Initiative, which is all the major global banks and insurance companies. And we're working with them to disinvest from fossil fuels, from mining from those areas, and create higher standards for what they will invest in and what stock exchanges have. Very exciting. They pay a membership fee, but they don't give actual donations to our causes. So that's how we navigate it. In UNICEF, which perhaps the stakes were less, okay, we're clear that we don't do, you have to breastfeed, you don't do milk substitutes, we understand about issues of child labor, etc. Those we could work with differently, and we made sure that there were policies in place to safeguard how they engage, what they engage, etc. So this is how we navigate it.
Thank you. Next question is, I enjoyed your thoughts around authenticity. How did you build your voice as within the rooms where you might not have seen people like you? And how does it change your perspective as you continue being a mentor? And thank you.
Building my voice was a journey, and maybe I was helped on that journey by my graduate school MBA process and how that was done in terms of, because, you know, the Caribbean background is you need to be humble. You shouldn't talk about yourself. It's about the we. You give things, you don't look people in the eye, it might be rude, etc., etc. So I come from that, Okay. And then I'm juxtaposed into you got to sell yourself, you got to make pitches, you have to speak, you have to convince, etc. I think if I had not had my MBA journey, it would have been a little harder. Maybe the second element to the question of finding my voice is I didn't always have a voice. So that is important. I don't think, well, I wasn't lucky to really have it at the beginning. I grew into it as I started to have more confidence in my abilities. But I remember many a conversation with my husband about why doesn't anybody listen to me? Why do they just ignore me? Why is it that nobody knows I'm in the room? But then somebody else says the same idea. I don't know how many, if I could get an amen on that, but I think many people have had.
Amen, Sonja.
Yeah, that's an amen, right? So you do a lot of talking to yourself. And how could I have done that meeting differently? And then for me, finding my voice came out of a lot of preparation. So I started to really invest in preparing for whatever the exchange or the interlude was. I was really top of my game. I'm not saying it boastfully, but that's how I did it. Okay. And that created entry points. But eventually, I had to go the professional route, and I have used many coaches along the way, professional coaches, to enable me to deal with whatever insecurities that I've had and how to navigate them. So there is that. I think also I would talk about those who went before me. So I had a strange experience. Every boss I had was in their last job and about to retire. So you know how they say you need a sponsor to navigate through your professional life? I was kind of having a problem with that because I had great bosses, but they were always on their way out. And how do you build that? And I believe, again, my Jamaican upbringing, that you have to work hard and people will know and recognize you for your hard work. It works at the technical level. As you get more and more senior, no, you need to have a voice. You need to show up at meetings. You need to have something to say. And so having a more senior person kicking me under the table and saying, talk, you got to say something, was actually part of how I got there. So that is really the truth in terms of how it works. You also have to look at others. Don't be afraid to have mentors. Don't be afraid to have role models. And also don't assume that the role model has to be doing exactly what you do to qualify as a role model, okay? You can learn from, I don't know, ministers in church or people in the mosque, or you can learn from, different people in leadership. So I think I have been influenced and absorbed along the way and kept testing. I questioned myself. I was truthful about what I thought I didn't have. And then I was brave enough to go seek help to get that.
It's very important, recognizing you need help and actually seeking the help to help you get better. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Another question. Thank you so much for your open and honest presentation. It broadened my understanding. Given all of the different cultures you've encountered, how are you navigating the multicultural dimension? Was there ever a time when you felt compelled to compromise any of your values? That's a great question.
It's a great question indeed. And it's an important question that I think you can even navigate if you stay in America and you're getting so culturally diverse. So it's a really important question. I think when I was younger and more insecure, this may have been an issue. So for me, I worked in I worked in different traditions for the early part of my life, right? Islam was predominant, Buddhist was predominant. I had a very linear, one-dimensional view. I only knew Christianity and whether you were Methodist, Catholic, Baptist. I hadn't even thought beyond that. And then I was into that. And then, for me, it created major issues around what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be respected? How do you navigate? Do you need to become submissive to show that you have respect? Do you need to become a bully to show that you're worthy of respect? So I think earlier on, these were challenges, but thank goodness that I have this island girl spirit. So I'm determined to be happy and to find my way. I'm very curious about what makes people tick, which is not how they present. This is not about the labels that we put on people, but it is about what's important to you in your family. What are the issues that you have? What books do you read? Who do you admire? And as I was able to explore and learn, I think my real immersion in multiculturalism was in WFP, in that Pakistan-Afghanistan experience, where I needed to realize that Jamaica was this tiny thing, and I was part of an African diaspora, and I needed to learn and embrace Nigerians and Ghanaians and Cameroonians and my husband's people, and that's when I think I became alive in terms of what it meant to be a part of a bigger universe. But also I learned, what drives someone who is Asian, and why do all Asians not think they're the same? So I think I opened myself to learning. I kind of try to take the good things from the cultures. I am aware of the negative things, and there are some negative things in all our cultures. But I tried and I learned to navigate it that way. I hope that answers.
I'll allow you to take a sip of water right now. You've been answering a lot of questions. There are a lot more questions, and I recognize I'm very sensitive to the time difference. It's almost midnight where you are, but there are a few more questions, and then we will conclude this very important session. So the next question is, hello, thank you for your wonderful speech. It moved. You briefly mentioned social media in your values for authenticity, but my question is in regards to integrity in how communities have transformed to being less integral from aspiring morality from celebrities or influencers. So how should we, in a digital age surrounded by endless influences, keep our individual integrity in order to have our values which enable success? So in essence, how do we fight the social media dragon is what this person's asking, to maintain our integrity and to continue to be whole.
I'm walking, I don't know if I have the answer to that. I'm walking that journey currently with my children who are obsessed with TikTok and social media and think, can you imagine for me as a Jamaican, that their job is going to become an influencer and they're going to make money by how many people like them. Yeah, I walk this journey because that's what my kids are growing up with, right? And you might be shocked, but on the African continent, there's some very, very, very successful and influential influencers, a lot of women more than men. And it's really hard. It's really hard to explain, but at the same time, if I can say, you see so many suicides and mental health issues going on around many of these same influencers that it's obvious, maybe not to them when they started the journey, but that's tremendous pressure to keep having to get all those likes, okay? And to pretend to be what you're not. And then I don't know if you've heard about this FOMO, fear of missing out. So I'm on this journey of learning all these things with my teenagers. And so how do you keep grounded? How do you make it truthful? Well, I haven't cut my children off, nor myself, from social media. So as a beast, I recognize that there are some positive elements to the beast. There is some knowledge to share, etc. But I think that, that authenticity, integrity, your values, we have to keep, what should I say, nourishing ourselves. We have to take the time to invest in ourselves and remind us of who we are. We have to remember small things that, your journey and your shoes are not mine. And I can celebrate your journey and I can celebrate your shoes, but that does not in any way reduce the importance of my own. So this is a balancing act. I am not really one of those who say down with social media, block it all, let it go. I can't do that. I work for a position where I see governments trying to tell their citizens how they should think and not having freedom. So I think we need that space, quite frankly, for people to experiment and, hey, to celebrate, and all for them if they want to show what they're doing. But I think we need to remain healthy. Our own mental health requires us, and this goes back my values, to thine own self be true, was something my mother kept telling me as I was growing up. To thine own self be true. And so I think we need to ensure that we are okay with who we are. And if we're not okay, because maybe we're not, then we figure out what will it take to make us okay. Okay? But I think that is not selfishness. That might become self-care to protect us from the other elements that are also existing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's not really it's a kind of work in progress,
For sure. We all have to figure out how to balance celebration with validation. And yeah, it's complex indeed. So another question, have you worked closely with environmental companies, and how have some of these companies created a positive impact on the environment?
Without naming the companies, yes, we work with companies on innovations and solutions. So there was something called the UN General Assembly about 3 weeks ago. And you may have heard that there is an international negotiation going on to eliminate single plastics use. I didn't speak about it, but UNEP has been given the resolution and mandate to get that through. And so the work was with supermarkets, big retailers, as well as producers of everyday household items, and getting them to envision a world where you will, and I think you've seen some of these ads, or I hope you have, where you won't pick your groceries, let us say, and put everyone in a little plastic bag, right? We will find other ways. We are also trying to promote that maybe we need to consider how we package liquids, detergents, other areas, and what solutions are around that. And the third element is very innovative and a little bit too new to think. We're looking at how we can recycle plastic materials and make building blocks for homes. These are just examples of things that are being discussed and tested. We are also, on the policy side, promoting and pushing that all those who take from Mother Earth need to replenish. So there are rules and guidance putting in. If you're a mining company, how many trees do you plant? What do you need to do with the community? How are you extracting? So we work on a number of those areas. And another example I would want to put is marine litter. We're working a lot on fisheries, on having sustainable trade solutions. I know you might not think we're the trade people, but working at how we ensure that our oceans remain healthy and what we are putting in and taking out of it. So these are the ways that we are working with corporations to bring change. Of course, you know about electric vehicles, so maybe you were thinking of that. In Kenya, where I am, we're going with electric bodas. I don't know, but we use small motorbikes for people to get around. Those we're looking to convert. We're looking at different ways of making clean energy for cooking. So there are many, many, many things, and we have partners around it. I gave a talk a few months ago about electricity and about new technology in terms of lighting and how we need to transform how we do cooling and climating, air conditioning, what we need to do to make it more sustainable, because the earth is getting warmer. But what are the natural things we can do also as we manage and plan cities? So there are many, many conversations around that, and I hope these are just a couple of things that I can say.
That's really interesting, using plastics as building blocks. Huh. Very interesting. Okay, I think we have, oh dear, we have quite a number of questions left, but I will do my best to get them all in before we close for this session. So there are two parts to leaving the world a better place. One is to create policies that help people and better society. The other part is ensuring the next generation is equipped with the tools to continue bettering the world. What advice would you give us on how we can do our part in bettering the world and continuing the progress that you and other amazing people have made?
Well, thanks for the compliment that you think I'm amazing. First of all, let me just pause and say thanks for that. But on a more serious note, I think we have to be intentional. Okay, I'm going to leave you with that. We have to be intentional that we're not just here for me and I and self, that there is a we, okay? That this Mother Earth is ours, okay? And that while we might be trying to look to space for new places because we think we're damaging this one and we need to find a plan B, actually the plan A is what we need to focus on, which is Earth. So the advice is about not being overwhelmed by thinking you have to do everything in order to make a contribution. You have to understand that everything that each one of us do, when it is for good, put together, will leave a legacy behind. And that's what our forefathers did. And this is what we need to do. We're going to have to make some tough choices as human beings, okay? There is no way that we can continue as we are and the planet not suffer, okay? So we have to make some decisions around what that means for you, what that means for me, okay? And the truth is it won't be the same for all of us, because if you are in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, or Greece, where temperatures are consistently now going over 40 degrees, okay? And they have to manage that, okay? This is not the story of Finland and Norway and you see what I'm saying? And if you are people in Brazil, in the Amazon, okay, and you're looking at rivers, what you need, okay, and what you will do, okay, will be different. But the beauty and the danger of the environment is that it doesn't have borders, okay? It crosses. And so we are all impacting each other. Therefore, take it in bite-sized pieces, do what you can do now, work to do more later, and bring others with you.
That's great advice. Sometimes we feel just so overwhelmed with all the need that exists that we sometimes don't believe that we can just do one small thing consistently to actually get to our goal. So thank you for that. I'm going to, okay, next question. With the UN Climate Change Conference coming up in November, I was wondering if UNEP plays any role in that, and if there are specific topics you believe need to be talked about the most.
How could you ask me that? Of course, of course, of course. UNEP plays a huge role in that. I don't even, you've left me speechless. What shall I say in terms of that? Climate, I spoke about the triple planetary crisis a few bits about, and I talked to you about climate change, okay? I talked to you about nature loss and biodiversity, and I talked to you about pollution, okay? UNEP's job and UNEP's position is you can't do one without the other. All three are merging and working together. So we need an integrated solution. So that is a key message. We will be leading forums. We will be leading topics around climate change. We will be trying to advocate for more aggressive targets. Glasgow, we didn't get the targets that we wanted in terms of 2030. Many people have shifted and now we're talking about 2040. Where we need more done before 2030. So these are areas that we will be stressing, but we will also be looking, because you know, we have ministers of environment, but you need ministers of finance, you need ministers of labor, you need ministers of trade if you're going to really make a difference. So we're looking at green economy, green solutions. What can we offer? We also have to be making sure that politicians and decision makers, to be quite honest, are not short-sighted and just looking at what their constituent and vote needs now, but that they will do the right thing of planning for 2030 and not for 2023. So those are some of the elements that we have. I will be sharing some resources at the end of the presentation that get into a lot more detail on these elements, but for sure, we are there.
Great, thank you so much. We are at 4:32 Eastern Standard Time. We have maybe one or two more questions that I will propose, and then we can wrap this up. So the penultimate question is, you've had and are having a remarkable career, but sometimes it can be hard to see the end in the middle. Would you talk about the value of setbacks or detours?
Yeah. You know, when you were inviting me to have this conversation, you may recall that I asked about the word safari. Yeah.
Yes,
I
you
talked
did.
about a safari. And
Yes.
that was not just because I'm in Kenya and it's a Kiswahili word, but because, life is not so much about the destinations, but the journey. And I know you may say that's a cliche, but it's not. Okay. Most of us, including myself, are not given the gift of crystal ball gazing to know where we're going to end up and where destiny will have us go. Okay? And none of us will be the best people that we are if there is always smooth sailing. Do you see this slide that I have on the screen? Can you still see it?
Yes, it's still up.
The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The leader adjusts the sail. This is what I live, okay? It is inevitable to have some disappointment in yourself, maybe disappointing someone else, which also hurts like hell. It is also impossible not to be rejected, okay? It's part of the human experience. I'm sorry to say, but it is. We might try to be in denial and think it doesn't happen, but if you don't have a hardship, you can't grow. You can't shift, you can't learn, okay? So we shouldn't okay, so I manage risks. You have to make educated risks in life. I'm not suggesting you be foolish and go run into a car so you know what it feels like to hit you. But I'm talking about the fact that there are going to be exams you pass. There are going to be times when you thought you'd hit an A and you get a C. There are going to be times when you compete for a job and you don't get it. There are going to be times when you know you're much better than the person who got it, but you still didn't get it. It's part of what makes us human beings, and it's the human experience. So that you know that I'm not speaking in cliches, if you will allow me, let me give you one of my most painful professional experiences. And this is a true story. When I was in Jordan, we in the UN, many of the agencies have something you call rotation. So because we are international civil servants, there is the expectation, and it is written in our contracts, that you are expected to move from country to country periodically. Depending on the country, it changes. And so, as you try to navigate your career, as you think of your personal situation and where it might be good for you to live or not live, okay, you take a keen interest in what opportunities may come up, right? And so I, like every other staff, knew that I think Jordan was 5 years, that my 5-year term was coming up. So I was hunting around for different places that I could go. And there was a very lucrative opportunity, a promotion in a country. And it was the only one of that level, or so I thought at the time, outside of New York. Now, I told you I had young kids. I didn't want to go to New York. I didn't want them on the subway and running for sitters and all of that. So I was looking for outside opportunities. So I went into this process and I gave it my all, and I got to, well, I thought actually I was the only one, but it turned out I was the top 2. And I was invited. So we in the UN do a lot of virtual interviewing. That's how we screen. So you do telephone interviews, or now we would do Zoom. So we pass that stage, you do your technical test. And then if you're lucky, you get an invitation to go to the country to meet the senior leadership. So I got that. And the process involved meeting various members of the management team, meeting the team that I would be leading, etc. I thought I had it in the bag, okay? And I heard who my competitor was, who was a colleague who I knew very well. But I will be telling the truth. I thought, no competition. and I would get it. Well, I didn't get the job. And I was extremely embarrassed because all of those, so, we're in a community, we're in a network. All of those who knew me and knew the other colleague were like, what did you do? Did you bomb it? How bad was your interview? What did you do? How could you not get the job? Which just made me feel worse and worse and worse. But time came for me to get feedback around what had happened. And I was told this. The reason I didn't get the job was I smiled too much. I looked too comfortable and at ease. I did not appear as if I could make difficult decisions or lead tough teams. So they went with a male who is a friend of mine to this day because he looked tougher and more in control. And I will never forget that because I had no idea that smiling was a crime. And, I'm very proud that I love life and I smile and I this. And I continue to smile today. But boy, was I embarrassed. Boy, was I traumatized. And it was my first major professional setback. And it hit my confidence for a while because every network meeting I went to, somebody would asking me, what happened? How didn't you get it, etc. But here I am today because after that came Geneva. And I told you how fabulous that was for me and what a game changer that has been. If I had not done Geneva, I would not be here today. That is for sure. So it's a lesson that sometimes, okay, so I got other feedback. I got feedback that I needed to find a mentor and that I didn't appear hungry enough, okay? I didn't want it badly enough. And so these are things that because in my career, in my organization, in the UN, there is no promotion, okay? If you want upward mobility, you must compete. You must apply, okay? This is not private sector or even governments where you can be promoted. But it has helped me because one, that disappointment made me really understand female leadership, how it is viewed. I had to make a tough call about myself. Am I going to change who I am? Am I going to represent differently? Or am I comfortable with being me? For me, the answer was I'm comfortable. But I did do the soul searching, and that was important. And it was also important for me to know how I showed up for future exercises. So just saying that, it happens. This is one. It's not the only one I have, but it's the one that, comes to mind because I think in some ways I was so hurt that smiling was considered a nail in my coffin that, it taught me a lot about how you're perceived. And all of us, I suppose, have some such experience.
More than I care to share. Let's go. It's really incredible that things can be so gendered without people really knowing that, because I don't think that a person would say to a man that you smile too much. It's not a thing. Hopefully things have changed a lot since that time. All right. And our ultimate question, and thank you so much. You've been incredibly honest and transparent, and I'm feeling you. So I hope that the students are feeling you as well. The last question is always so impressive, Sonja. How did your husband manage his career as you were building yours?
That's somebody who knows me, who is being naughty.
It sounds like your husband posted that one.
Oh, he's right here listening to me, so I know it's not him. That has been one of the most interesting journeys that we have been on as a couple. When we got married, we were young and idealistic and fresh. You remember, you may have heard me say, didn't think we were going to have children. We loved the adrenaline of emergencies, and life was good. I had joined the UN before him, so I was a bit more senior, but we had clear paths and etc. But accompanying spouses and traveling and working together in the UN is not easy. It's not a joke. The people who do it and make it are in the 5%, okay? So that meant making a lot of choices in which for him, it was far more difficult because he ended up having to be opportunistic and taking short-term assignments, consultancies, temporary, to make sure we could be together, okay? So that meant that he was not doing the traditional career progression you may expect. And that means there are what we call in our lingo break-in services, okay? Then we tried, when I had my son, the second baby, and I was doing that regional job I told you about, he gave up his job completely, okay? And he took on a role of being the caregiver for a child. So here we are in male-dominated, heavy testosterone Arab world. Here I am looking cute in my suits and chairing meetings, and we go to dinners and receptions, and they turn to my husband, and the first thing men ask him is, what do you do? And then, he says, I'm here with her. That he did not seem to be bothered, but I became extremely uncomfortable with that and how it was making him feel and be. So eventually, to cut a long story short, we decided that it was necessary for both of us. We both went to school, we're both educated, that it was important for both of us to meet professional objectives if we could, because that was also a part of the fulfillment. So we decided to live apart, but employed. I'm not suggesting that to anybody else, to be honest. It's hard going. We did it for 8 years. It's really difficult. We saw each other maybe every 6-8 weeks. He continued to work in really hard duty stations, the Iraqs, the Syrias. He specializes in humanitarian cross-border operations. And it was really, really hard. At the same time, I watched him grow. I watched him become more professionally secure. I watched him find his own space and his own voice. So, these are trade-offs that we have made. When I joined UNICEF, I was not married. And when we agreed to marry, I went to New York for a meeting. And one of the things that an HR colleague told me, who I think she thought was giving me good advice, was, why would you want to get married? You're going to introduce guilt in your life forever. Why are you bringing on that stress? Do you know how many of these relationships end in divorce? I'm dead serious. Can you imagine? I'm in my euphoria of being engaged and planning, and this is what she said. But there is truth in it. There is a it's not equal, and I'm telling you the truth. Men can marry and have accompanying spouses, and women know how to find fulfillment in that and be okay, okay? Nowadays, maybe they're looking for more, but that was there. It's much harder when it's the reverse. I have been lucky to have a spouse who is secure in himself, that gender thing hasn't really played as much. But it doesn't mean that it's easy to maintain a relationship with all that distance. So I'm giving you the truth. But I am here to say December of this year, I think will be 20 years. So I think I have managed to not deal with that prediction. Sometimes we hate each other, sometimes we love each other, that's life. But we are professionals in our own right. We are respected. He has a strong career. And I think that is what has worked for us. But it's not a fairy tale. It is a challenge. I am also, and I'll say it, and he's in the background, so he's listening, but I'll say it. I also don't have a problem with jealousy and professional success and who is going further and who is going farthest. So in that one, I am blessed. Which is why I told you family is really important. Know what's important.
That's a great way to almost end this conversation. I'm going to steal your time for 10 additional minutes or less. But in the chat, we've had quite a number of questions about how do I get in? And I know you and I also talked about that, just some of the challenges that the UN institution faces in terms of hiring or recruiting or attracting younger, very engaged talent. So if you can talk a little bit about that, I would appreciate it as we wrap up. And I want to say thank you to the students or to the presenters. Sorry, not the presenters, the participants who have asked such engaging questions. You've made Sonja sit back in her chair quite a number of times as she pondered the complexity of it, and I really appreciate it. So please, how do students get in?
So how do we get in? So that is this for me? Can I do it too? My answer is yes. I am not an enigma. I am not the only one. That's the first thing I want you to know. Interesting fact, the third most influential person right now in the UN, the chef de cabinet of the Secretary General, is Jamaican. His name is Courtney Randall, okay? True fact. The Undersecretary General of Management, managing all the resources and policies, her name is Catherine Pollard. She is Guyanese, okay? The head of security for all of Kenya and much of East Africa, his name is Peter Marshall, is Jamaican. I'm giving them all big ups and shout outs because I want you to know it's real, it's there, and it's happening. And how can that happen for you? So let me break it down to you. And I'm using UNEP as an example. As you can see, this is our workforce currently. As you can see, we're really in a sad state, below 40 years of age, okay? Our workforce is on the older side. But in that, there is an opportunity because that means people are retiring soon. And that means new blood needs to come into the system. So that's the first message. And this is live, real data. We are a little unusual in the UN. We have more female than men. We were doing a bit not so good at the senior leadership levels, but we've turned that around. And so this is something that we have. And these are the categories for regions that we use in the UN. GRULAC is where Jamaica would be, Latin America, Caribbean, etc. WEOG is where America is and Europe. So this is how we are. So this is what we look like, okay? So as I said to you, only 23% are millennials. And we are working very, very hard on future talent pipeline outreach, which is something like what I'm doing today, but it's a bit more extensive. We work with universities, we work with embassies, etc., to do it. I am listing there for you all the kinds of jobs that we need. And please note, they are not all environment. We need lawyers, we need scientists, we need knowledge management, library, we need it all. People like me, business, ad, etc. So these are the kinds of backgrounds that you need to deliver, and perhaps you see yourself in one of these areas. In terms of how do you do it, and Professor Miller has this, I think, this is what you need, okay, in terms of the levels. We were built on a kind of civil service kind of hierarchy kind of system. So we go by P1 is the most junior and D2 is the kind of most senior before you get into a different group of things. So this is what you need, okay? We currently have 54 senior leaders at the P5, and they entered as P1s, P2s. So people join us and tend to stay, okay? And how do you do it? Well, we have different ways. We have what we call staff positions, professional service or general service staff. We have junior professional officers, which is a program where governments can sponsor their citizens or others to come and work with us for 2 years or 3 years. It's very popular. We have something called a young professionals program where we do calls like rosters. We ask people to apply and then we see how we work. But we also have more flexible options, which as we look at the future of work are becoming more interesting to people who want to experience the UN, but maybe not invest in it for life. So for those in academia, for those in research, for those who like project design, we have consultancies, etc. There's a very interesting program called UN Volunteers, and there is a link that we give that's really very interesting. They take all categories of staff, and it's an opportunity to give back and get a little pay. And we have internships. Now, in the UN, unfortunately, in the UN Secretariat, for which I'm a part of, we don't pay for internships, but we're looking at new options for that. So this is where you can apply. I think there is a typo I'm just seeing now. That's careers.un.org. There should be a G at the end of that. That's where you'll see what's there, all the different UN agencies put in there. The application process is online. You have to use Inspira. You need to invest. It's a very heavy data-driven form, capturing your academic experience, your work experience. It will ask you questions related to your integrity, your previous employment, etc. But once it's in the system, you can use it multiple times to apply for different things. The UN volunteers, I really encourage you to use it. We're using it a lot. We have a lot of lawyers, a lot of young professionals who want a taste of multilateralism are going that route. And there is a UN agency called UNEP who specializes in providing project expertise to the UN. So we have a number of areas. I wanted to demystify this for you because often we're told, I don't know how you do it. You don't need to know anybody. I didn't know anybody, okay? But you have to apply, and maybe you have to apply many times, okay? To many, many different things. Also, you need to have experience. You can't just have the degree or the master's. You need to have some experience before you can get in. We have an email I'd like to share with you if you'd like more information. And there is also a very detailed process that we're pleased to offer and share that Professor Miller can circulate as she chooses. So I ask that you consider multilateralism an international service as part of your safari, of your journey. It doesn't have to be all the time. It can be a short one, but I'm sure you will be enriched not only by serving, but being able to work and experience different cultures and settings. So I think with that, may I thank you, Hyacinth, Professor Miller, for allowing me this opportunity to engage with your students, and for those who joined online. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I hope that I have left some nuggets that can be of use to others. And, you know, for me, it's 2 minutes to midnight. But with
I just want to thank you very much. And I can almost guarantee that in 20 years, there'll be a student that you spoke to today who will say that it was this talk that inspired them, because I'm inspired and I really appreciate this. So thank you, Asante Sana. And I wish you a good night's rest. Take care.
Okay, and thanks to your team for the technology and organizing.
Absolutely.
I wish you all
Thank
the
you
well.
to Christina Strasberger, who made this happen. Thank you to Parth, who walked me off the ledge to, you know, make sure that this thing happened. And I appreciate it.
And I thank my
To
team
Ruth.
also.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Take care. Walk good, everybody.
Walk
All
good.
right.
Okay.
Right.